All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coaches Compass. Remember, it is season 2. Don't know what episode it is because we just continue to record. Continue to bring on cool guests from all across the world. It's your boy, Coach Crew, reporting live from the U.S. of A. Coach J can't be with us tonight because, again, we're still dealing with those time differences, 7 hours behind, 7 hours ahead, all that different stuff. He's got to do. He's trying to figure out retirement, whatever it may be. Now, remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so we can continue to have this thing growing, continue to bring on cool guests from all over the world. Today, we've got Coach Ryan McLaughlin with us today. He is a sports scientist, PhD candidate, fascinated by all kinds of performance, also working with Vauld Performance. Coach, thank you and welcome to the Coach's Compass.
Coach, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Man, it's been a pleasure because obviously I'm over here at D1 Murfreesboro, and our location, D1 West Nashville, has the Vauld systems, right? We have the timing gates, right? We know about the Nord boards, the force plates, and all these other things you guys got going on. But first, before we even jump into the systems, what got you into this field and what got you working with Vauld?
Crazy question, I know. Yeah, it's a loaded question. So my background initially, you can hear from my exotic accent, from Ireland. I'm based here in Vancouver, Canada, but I've been here for the last 3 years or so. So before that, I have an undergrad in sports science. I've got a master's degree in strength and conditioning, all from Ireland, and I'm currently chasing a PhD in sports science as well. And previous roles for me were in that kind of sports science S&C field. Previously worked in rugby and Gaelic football, if you're familiar with that. So huge in Ireland, starting to get bigger across the world, but definitely Ireland's where it's at for that. And I've kind of came up in the industry using this technology, which has been a huge help for moving to Vauld. So at the start, force plate analysis was kind of my wheelhouse with teams, with athletes, and trying to make sort of instantaneous decisions based off that. And then fast forward a few years later, after working in team sport and working with athletes, an opportunity came up to help Vauld here in Canada. So we're an Australian-based company. Started off in Brisbane, Australia, over 10 years ago now, and we are slowly moving kind of across the world. So now we've got a Canadian team, we've got a North American team, we've got a team in Europe, we've got a team in the Middle East, for example, and that's kind of where I'm at with Vauld.
You guys are all over the place. Because I've seen a couple of our coaches that are in Europe have your systems. And now, like I said, we have the systems here at D1 in Tennessee. And I've seen it, obviously, you guys going out to Australia. Now you're talking about Canada. That's a huge, wide range of people that are using y'all systems. How have you seen, because you said you started off with force plates, how have you seen technology help the field? And also, how have you seen technology kind of been a downplay in the field to hurt the field of strength conditioning and sports science?
Yeah, no, great question. So like with the era that we're in, there's going to be change. I think, we've got our old school methods, we've got our maybe very new school methods, and we have to find somewhere in the middle that applies to both. So with Vauld, we've got 3 main arms of the company. We've got Vauld Performance, which is our high performance sport, NFL athletes, MLB, for example. And then we've got Vauld Tactical, which is going to be like our first responders or military or police or fire department. But then we've also got Vauld Health, which is allied health, physiotherapists. So everyone from your local clinic down the street all the way to your $1 million athlete can use this technology, which is pretty cool in itself. But with that comes challenges and comes some changes as well. So I will say that we've probably we've got the curve of early adopters. We're maybe past that now. A lot of people are starting to use this technology and understand that it's necessary for just objectivity. Because previously it would have been a very subjective, would have been your opinion versus the other coach's opinion. And sometimes, especially when cases don't work out as planned, if it's a rehab or a return to play, that can be quite contentious. So having numbers and objectivity associated is huge. And for me, what I've kind of seen to be the way to get out in front so far is to have really good processes and really good systems in place. So yes, we've got technology, but the technology is merely a tool. When you make decisions often, and when you look at the data, you actually have to have a really good structured thought process so you can remove any emotional attachment you might have and actually just let the data inform your decision making. So it's not data driven decision making, but it's data informed decision making, because as we know as coaches, there's so much context and so many moving parts that aren't factored into any of this objective measurement.
Yeah, I mean, that's That's really important that you say that. Having the data, not it being data driven, but data like you actually just have the data just back there for you to help you as a tool, right?
Hmm.
But big question is, how do you get strength and conditioning and sports science to kind of coincide, work together? Because I feel like it's a hard thing to talk about because you talk about return to play, you talk about the SNC, you talk about physical therapists, right? Those are like three different arms, but in the end, right, they're all trying to help the athlete get better, right? And that's where kind of like they all have sports science in there, right? And they're all part of strength and conditioning. So how does the technology help with getting sports science and strength and conditioning and physical therapists all to kind of come together and do the best for the athlete?
Yeah, great question. So the nice thing about it is like we touch on this a lot with our clients. It's one testing process, no matter who you are. So let's think about the performance field. We've got our multidisciplinary team. We've got our sport coach, our S&C coach, our sports scientist, and our physio. We might get one athlete to do 3 counter movement jumps, which like CMJ, it's the staple jump everyone does. Inside those 3 reps, which aren't that demanding, totally with the volume that an athlete goes through, we've got 230 or so metrics that we can look at. So you've got the athlete to do 3 jumps. The S&C can have a look at his KPIs. The sports scientist can have a look at his KPIs, and then we can also have the physio looking at their specific metrics. So instead of having to pull the athlete this way and that way and everyone fighting over them and trying to get their own assessments done, we can start to work together as like a true multidisciplinary team should do, rather than like I've been in these positions before where it's me against the physio and I'm the one who broke the athlete, they're the one who has to fix the athlete, and it's back and forth like that. Or it's me against the sport coach and I'm the evil guy who's trying to tell him that you can't use this player today and he's just rolling his eyes. So if you can find a way to make the process as minimal as possible with regards to the time you need to spend, but have the impact be as large as possible, that's where it's at. And I think that's where Evolved, but also other technologies in general, are coming to the forefront now, because time is our biggest thing when it comes to sport athletes. As a coach, you're always going to want more time. You're never going to say, hey, I want to do 6 more jumps with this athlete. I probably want more time to coach them, to talk to them, to figure out, am I having the right effect with the training that I'm going, or even just to figure out, did they fight with their girlfriend last night? Is there something that's going to be, a conflicting factor with training that is going to help me, to make me aware? So I think that's where we're kind of going. The technology certainly is a great tool. It enables you to do great things, but without a really structured system or process, with regards you as a coach or a sports scientist, but then also the wider team that you work with, I think that's where we need to be striving towards.
Have you seen a difference in like buying or embracing the technology from Australia to North America to Europe, comparing them to, I would say, all the strength and conditioning fields and different sports? Like, has there been a difference in like the areas that you guys are in on how these coaches like allow technology to come in? Because you might go run into we'll just use like North America, for example. I'm here in Tennessee where we're still in the South, right? So it's still the old school mindset. It's like, hey, we're just going to go and lift weights, lift heavy, run a couple conditioning, and we'll be good. We'll be a good. And I'll talk about football. We'll be a great football team, right? But there's also other parts that go into it that come into play, right? So how has it been, on these different continents dealing with, the old school mindsets and, like you said, the transition to the newer ones and getting them to like see that, hey, technology can actually help you guys.
Yeah, 100%. So I think like if you look at it from 2 different approaches, the first one is academia and research, and I do think that Australia has been kind of out in front over the last 10 to 20 years. They've been cranking out lots of really good and really impactful research, and that's where most of our products have originated from, in Australia. And that's based off problems that they've been seeing in the field. So if I think about the Nord board, that was just to answer the question or the problem: why are we seeing so many repetitive hamstring strains in AFL? And they looked into the research and they eventually came up with the product, and Vault was there to help them commercialize it, which is a great example of that. But from there, the research seems to drive the practitioner's knowledge and maybe their acceptance of it. And I do think that North America has been a very close second, because we've got so many huge institutions with so many great researchers that are really diving into like the deep questions and not just some of the stuff that's going to get them to a PhD. They actually want to answer questions, which I think is awesome. And then the second kind of stream of it, and what defines if you're able to get in there without too much friction, is usually the structure within an organization. So if you look at, I think about my own background with Europe and with even Ireland, there's usually a very tight-knit group of S&C and sports science, and at times it's the same person doing 2 to 3 roles,
Yeah.
which makes it a bit easier. And we all know that, if you come up high school, college, even the pros, there's big separation between the resources that you've got access to. So if we look then at North America and these larger organizations, and we talk about the South and being a bit old school, you said it, not me, but there's a kind of this mantra that I've seen, at least, of when you've got the right people, and when I say the right people, I just mean the people that are qualified to understand the technology, open to those conversations, it typically makes it a bit easier. But if you've got a general manager who's not really involved in the S&C or the sports science side, that's when it gets a bit tricky initially to kind of go in there and to sell the dream of all this type of stuff. And what I've found works really well is like a case study approach. So you're dealing with this athlete, they're getting paid a significant amount of money. And if they're injured, if they're on the bench, they're not really doing too much for the organization. Probably not that good of an investment from a financial point of view. So if we can show that this technology can give us an insight into their progress right up to the point of injury, but when they do get injured, we've got some baseline data to say, okay, you're hurt, this is what the injury was, but now we know exactly where we need to get you back to. And we can do that rather than guessing. And again, that subjectivity of, yeah, he doesn't have pain anymore. Let's try him out in the field and see what happens. And then 9 times out of 10, maybe they're back to 85% or 90% of their best, but not 100%. And I think that's where I've seen success with it as well. If we can actually identify a case study and show where the technology can benefit, that's you're usually onto a winner from that.
So if you were, today you're opening up your own, gym facility, what would be maybe your 1 or 2 pieces of Vald equipment that you would say, hey, these are like staples that you should probably get? You're at a sports performance location. Maybe you also have a little bit of general population. Most of your clientele is going to be athletes. What would you say be the top 2 things you would order?
Yeah, so force decks, undeniably number 1. They're always going to be top of my list, and that's based off my experience and background, but also I just think they're awesome. And then the second one is the speed gates, so Smart Speed, which you've got access to as well. And as an S&C coach, we're talking about surfing the curve, force velocity. So it's how much force can you produce and how fast are you? So obviously that applies to how you move a barbell or how you jump, but also the name of the game in team field sports is evasion. It's sprinting fast, moving fast. So having a way to quantify both of those, I think, is where I would go to start off. At least we've got other options then of if you want to get into the nitty gritty and start to isolate specific joints or muscles, we can look at isometric dynamometry like the Force Frame or the Dynamo or the NordBord. But again, if I was going to choose 2, that's where I would start, and I would slowly build out from there.
Yeah, I would say, because you guys got a lot of things, right, to use that look very shiny and pretty and stuff, but not all of it, I would say, is depending on where you're at, with your opening of a facility, or a little bit later on, depending on what you're trying to do, what becomes important. Where do you see yourself going in all of this with Vald? Like, where is it for you? Like, how does it, 3 to 5 years look like down the line?
Yeah, so at the minute, I'm just after sort of undertaking the journey of a PhD. So I'm doing that in repeated sprintability, and sports science is a bigger umbrella term for that. But for me, hopefully still working with Vald, working with our clients, and starting to develop some of this research as well to inform our training, because I think that it's very easy to stagnate in this industry. A lot of people put in the work for their their academic qualifications, and then all of a sudden they get the job they wanted and they stay exactly where they are. So always trying to push the button and push the needle a bit further forward and see what we can answer there. So with the research that I'm doing, we're looking at repeated acceleration protocol and how that compares to the typical repeated sprint ability training that we see done. So if you do your standard RSA training, it's like 6 by 30 meter efforts with reasonably consistent breaks in between. I'm going to try and see if we can quantify shorter efforts with a bit more volume. So at like a 10 meter interval rather than the 30 meter interval. So it's going to be an interesting ride for sure.
Sounds like a very interesting ride, because we had a question from one of our former guests, a coach before you. And her question for you was, what is a big goal you have for yourself as a sports scientist?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. With no notice. I suppose the biggest thing, and this is something I'm chasing across the board, is trying to progress your impact while reducing the actual time demand of doing things. So I'm huge for systems, I'm huge for processes, and trying to make things as least cognitively demanding as possible. And I found that in the past, when you're dealing with lots of athletes, if we deal with a team of 30 players, let's just say, it's very difficult to run through a comprehensive testing session where you've got lots of impact. Everyone feels valued and they've got your time. But also, when you look at the data, you might only have 15 minutes to make a decision to let the coach know, yeah, we're good to do exactly what we planned today. Maybe we need to tailor back some of our accels and decels for these 5 guys or those 5 guys. So trying to bring systems in place that sort of look at multiple different perspectives of data and of context to help you make a decision. I think that's where I'm trying to go. And again, it's a slow journey. There's lots of, very educated people that are doing similar things. And the hope is that if we can all collaborate, that in 5 to 10 years time, that the field of sports science, I think, will be significantly changed for the better.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's growing and it's going in the right direction. But a lot of us coaches, that are on both sides, so the strength conditioning, sports science side, we're always wondering, who do we learn from? Who do we lean on? So who are some of the coaches that you're leaning on, or some of the sports scientists that you're leaning on to help sharpen your own self and hold you accountable, to learning and continuing to grow?
Yeah, there's a range of different, folks out there across very niche subjects. And I like to kind of take a bit from everyone that I can see. Like, we've got Instagram now, which is so accessible. The danger of Instagram, I think, is that there's so much information out there, and there's no way to really validate if it's true or not. But again, that's the nice part about it. It's all based off people's experience. And I will say that everything everybody puts on Instagram, I do think they believe to be true in their own context. So it's about getting into their perspective. But without rambling and going on a rant there, there's 2 people that have like changed the way that I've thought sort of recently, and then a bit more long term as well. The first one is Derek Hansen. So Derek's here in Vancouver, and I was lucky enough to start to work with Derek through Vauld and through our role, and I've grown a bit of a friendship with him in the last couple of years. And Derek's going to be helping me out with some of the stuff with my PhD as well. But Derek's a unique individual with regards. He's been exposed to lots of high profile coaches over the years, and he's got his own specific way of thinking about things. I'm quite young, but in a way I'm quite old school as well, where I just assume that the book says do this, so this is how we should train. As soon as I met Derek, I was like, this guy's a bit crazy. But being around him, seeing his sort of methods in action, that has really just backed up why he is so highly regarded and where he gets the results that he gets. So that's Derek, and I'll stop giving him too many compliments in case he gets a big head. And then the next guy is actually over in Scotland, Alan Murdoch. So Elevate Sports Rehab, if you can sort of check him out. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago. Alan spoke at it. And again, similar to Derek, he's got his own very niche way of presenting things. So he focuses on achieving really good speed mechanics as his principles for return to play and rehab. And typically the process that I've seen anyways is very sort of long and slow duration stuff at the start of a process. And then you slowly start to ramp it up when the person's able to get there. But Alan has kind of flipped that on his head. And he starts off with really intense, mechanically demanding activities, focusing on really good form with, just your basic running mechanics, and then moving things sort of towards the longer aerobic efforts. And it seems to be something that is working quite well for him as well. So that's someone I would be following for the next couple of years with anticipation that he's going to make a big change as well to the industry, particularly with rehab and return to play.
That's awesome that you mentioned Derek, because we had Derek on a few episodes ago. First season 1, we had Derek on, and it was great to just have him on and talk about just his journey throughout it all and how he got to where he's at now, because we obviously see that, when you're talking about the sprint industry, you're talking about speed, mechanics, all that stuff. Derek's like a huge staple in it, right? Because he's going around to all these conferences and speaking to a lot of people. He's worked with a lot of high profile athletes too. But Derek is a huge one. But the other guy you mentioned, haven't heard about him, but definitely going to check him out.
Yeah, I would recommend that. For with Derek being in the sprint game, the one thing to remember is that sprint coaches are typically so track and field dominant, because track and field athletes are so pure that they're amazing at plyometrics, amazing at top end speed, mechanically just gifted. But being able to move from that kind of isolated environment, which is quite one dimensional in some ways. As a dumb S&C coach, I can say that, but moving that into the team field sports environment where there's so much reactivity, so many moving parts, and so much unpredictableness. I think that's where you'll see some of these coaches come to the fore, and then a few others are like Les Spellman, if you follow him in California.
Everybody knows Les.
Yeah, and I just love the way that he approaches things, and he's got this this kind of really simple way to break down some really complex things. But if you're able to do that and educate others and bring them with you, I think that's awesome. So shout out to Les as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of big name people like with Les. You got CC Murray, then you got Tony Holler, you got Joey down in FAU, you got Tony Villani down at XPE, and so there's guys in this game that are crazy to learn from, especially if you want to be in the speed sector, right? Like those guys are like staples in just talking about getting people fast and making it easy for people to understand. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in this thing where we know all the science, right? We know how to talk really, really big words. But if you can be able to explain it to a 5-year-old, I think that makes you really, really special in this industry. So with 100%. that, how can our coaches that are listening to this get a hold of, pieces of equipment from you guys, from Vald, like they're trying to get more involved in the speed game and help themselves out?
Yeah, so like we've got people all over the States, we've got people all over Canada, and then further afield in Europe and the Middle East and stuff as well, in the UK. If you're interested, you can reach out directly to me. Just go to Instagram, ryan.vald, pretty easy to remember, and I'll kind of connect you with the relevant individual in your area. But I would say that if you've been looking around for the last while, you probably know who the relevant individual is already. We're a bunch of good people, and we're just trying to help people out. The nice thing I think about Vald and our staff is we're not really trying to sell things. We're trying to answer problems. So if you come to us and you're a speed facility, obviously Speed Gates is going to be the first thing that we look at. But if you're a speed facility who's got lots of adductor issues or lots of hamstring related issues, there might be other options to help as well. So that the thing I really like about Vald and our culture as a team is just how we're looking to answer questions and solve problems, and nothing else too negative, which is great.
Yeah, I can speak highly of Vald for themselves just because Matt came out to us, kind of brought all his equipment and showed us how it worked. So it was a great time just showing us how to use the stuff, but also how important it was for us to be able to have it here, how that would change our game of getting clientele in too. How we can help athletes become even faster. So I think it was super important to know that. And your back end support is tremendous. I've reached out to them plenty of times, and within 24 hours, I usually get a response. So it's been awesome to have that. And the fact that, if somebody does run into the timing gate and it does break, you guys got the warranty system and everything going on. So that's a huge factor, because we got a lot of kids that could potentially run into something.
And we see the same thing with ice hockey up here in Canada. It's as if people are aiming for the gates. They're not trying to get. They see the light and they just go straight for it. But it's quite a robust system. You can use it literally anywhere. So outdoors, indoors, on the rink or whatever. So it's been pretty cool to see our usage just keep growing. Like we've got our basic combine prep athletes that are looking to just know what their 40 is. And we've also got people that are doing some reactive training. We've got some people that are recovering from some serious life-threatening injuries that are using Smart Speed just to get back to function and to reactivity. And then we've got like some insane athletes from a Winter Olympics point of view that are using the gates in that context. So much going on out there, and just I'm loving the opportunity to keep learning as we keep going.
That's awesome. I'm sure you guys got so much data to go through and some really crazy times that you guys are probably seeing on there.
Yeah, 100%. With Vald, I think it's really important to educate people on the normative data element. So we're collecting, it's anywhere upwards of 2 million data points every month from all of our organizations across the world. So with that, we can start to have some comprehensive and confident assumptions around what a good time is. And we've started to break that into, by your sex at birth and then also your age bracket as well. So the biggest question, I know it, everyone else knows it, but the biggest question you'll get as a coach after doing a test, it's not what was my concentric impulse or what was my reaction time. It was, is that good? And if you're able to now quantify that and say, well, it's in the 50th percentile for college athletes in soccer, this is where you're at. it helps you so much to actually understand where you fall relative to your peers. It helps us have conversations with parents who maybe do have aspirations for their kid to go to the next level, and we can actually show, well, okay, he's 13 now, this is where he stacks up, and maybe this is the work that we need to do, and get them back into the facility and get a structured program in place. So being able to answer that, I think, has been one of the differentiating factors involved. Like, we've got technology, it's world class, it's amazing, but I think the data end of it is going to be the next 10 years where we continue to grow and continue to help people as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see all the data you guys continue to collect, and also just on our side, what we're collecting and how it's going to continue to grow. On top of that, before we get out of here, Coach, what was something you'd want us to ask our next guest?
Do I get to know who the next guest is?
I'm not even sure who the next guest is right now.
Okay. I guess what has been the biggest influence to their career up until this point, and what do they think the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like with respect to that influence? So something that has changed their approach or their perspective on things, and how are they going to take that forward and inform the rest of their career?
What has it been for you?
Ooh, God, I can ask questions. It's just tough to the biggest thing for me has honestly been moving away from niches, moving away from specific training methodology. So there's been people that have influenced me that have been like regarded as the ACL guy, the hamstring guy, all of these very specific training modalities. And I found that if I can pick and choose from each of those people, there's gold buried in there. But if you start to like just bring yourself closer towards being just individualized to, I can only treat hamstrings or I can only treat groins, it starts to just take away your value as well. And I saw, I think Tanner Kerr, who's a coach here in Vancouver, he was on another podcast and he mentioned something like that as well. But that's been huge for me. Just start to pick and choose the little fine bits of detail and build your own identity, build your own value proposition as well.
I love it, Coach. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for jumping on and sharing about Vault, but also yourself. You know, how you got into this, how you got to where you are now. And, you know, a lot of us coaches are looking up to you guys and learning as much as we can. So thank you for your time and thank you for today.
Appreciate that. And thank you for the opportunity to come on and talk. I've been following you guys now for a bit since I saw you pop up on Instagram one day, and I think that the stuff you're doing is really helping the industry. So keep going, and big love to you guys.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Awesome.